Hello and welcome to Region Locked. When the first entry of Nintendo's Pokemon franchise released, it was considered to be a groundbreaking new form of RPG, becoming a huge success right out of the gate. In the games industry, when a new title is released with an interesting concept that resonates with an audience, it's a common occurrence for other developers to see this and create something of their own using similar mechanics. Pokemon ultimately went on to become the biggest media franchise of all time, creating numerous sequels, each continuing the company's success. One franchise, which seemed to grab hold of Pokemon's general concept while trying to form its own unique premise, though eventually becoming infamous in the West as a fake Pokemon game through the action of bootleggers and translators, is Telefang. The Telefang series saw two releases, with the first coming to the Game Boy Color in the year 2000 and its sequel in 2002 on the Game Boy Advance. Both titles were published by Natsume and developed by Smilesoft. We'll get to them later. The first Telefang, Keitai Denju Terefangu, translated as Mobile Phone Beast Telefang, follows the story of a 10-year-old boy named Shigeki. Set in the year 2020, a technology has been developed called antenna trees, which utilize a unique antenna found on mobile phones called the D-Shot. When combined, these two devices allow people to teleport into another world. Shigeki finds one of these mobile devices, and after losing a baseball close to an antenna tree, he, along with another boy named Matsukyo, are transported to the other Denju world by accident. This world is rife with fantasy creatures known as Denju, all of whom have their own D-Shot antenna, using it to call their friends to assist them during battles. These creatures often battle one another. Humans who befriend, train, and handle Denju are known as T-Fangers. Shigeki, trying to learn more about this world, travels the land and becomes a T-Fanger himself. Throughout his journey, Shigeki becomes wrapped up in a variety of sub-stories involving other humans who entered this mysterious world, as well as evil Denju. The game's sequel, Telefang 2, shares many similar beats to the first entry. It follows another 10-year-old boy named Kyo, though he is exploring the fantasy world in order to find his lost father. He is accompanied by his friend, Midori, and while exploring the world, comes across a Denju named Diablos. Diablos has been traveling the land and is destroying the antenna trees in an attempt to stop humans from entering the Denju's world. Diablos succeeds in destroying all but one of these trees, making it the last remaining gate between the real and fantasy worlds, making it Kyo's primary objective to stop Diablos from cutting off the two worlds, thus trapping not just himself, but also anybody else currently in the Denju world. These Telefang games play very similarly to Pokemon titles, but with some key differences in tone and style that make it clearly stand out as its own series when comparing the two. Rather than battles initiating in the wild only when walking through grass, battles can start anywhere, even while in town. Rather than the player capturing creatures in capsules and holding them captive, they instead befriend monsters after fighting them during exploration, with the hopes of being given their phone number. In battles, T-Fangers can utilize 1 to 3 Denju at any one time. While a T-Fanger will always have one Denju with them while adventuring, the other two beasts have to be brought in. As this is done over a phone call on a cell phone, reception coverage is an important mechanic. With better coverage, indicated by an icon on screen, more Denju can be called to battle. The player's location in the world is also important. If a Denju's home turf is too far away from their location, it may take several turns for them to arrive for the fight. Not only that, but they may call the player to inform them that they've become distracted somehow, and may take longer than anticipated. As the player is able to see which Denju their opponents will be using in a fight, there is a significant element of strategy in deciding which Denju should be called. As with Pokemon, Denju have elemental types, though unlike Pokemon, all of the creatures' attacks will be of that same element, playing into their effectiveness during battle. There are 6 elements in total: forest, aquatic, desert, grassland, mountain, and sky. Denju only learn 4 moves in total, typically 2 offensive, 1 stat altering, and 1 Denma attack, an attack which damages enemies based on separate Denma damage and defense statistics. Hearts can be dropped by running through grass patches in the overworld in order to recover health, rather than having creatures heal in town or through items. Money will also sometimes be dropped. If there's no grass in the vicinity, the player can also simply rest until their health has fully restored. Denju can level up, eventually leading them to evolving, increasing their strength. While many evolve by simply reaching a certain level, leading to better stat increases, there are 2 other methods of evolution. Denju can be fused with an item, which, while being the worst for increasing the creature's stats, it is typically the quickest method. With some, it may also be the only method, though if the creature cannot evolve through fusion, they will instead just gain some experience. Another technique is through experimental evolution, using DNA samples from a set of Denju, typically used for creatures that do not naturally evolve through leveling. In total, the first Telefang has 174 Denju to befriend, with some being secret. the player will have to enter the creature's phone number manually, with these being found in various promotional materials. With the game's sequel, several changes and improvements were made over the first entry, including an increase of creatures to 200, though not including many of the beasts found within the first release. Creatures can utilize multiple elements through their attacks, differing from their base element, which is only taken into account when defending. Denju also have their own friends, irrespective of the player, who may assist the creature in battle randomly. The game's overworld was also changed. Where Denju would previously be random encounters, they can now be seen in the game's overworld, with a battle starting when close. Items were also expanded beyond bolstering a Denju, including items that can heal, key items relating to the game's events, and items to increase the chances of a monster giving their phone number to the player. Telefang doesn't just bear a striking resemblance to Pokemon within its gameplay, but also in the fashion that it was published. The first title and its sequel saw release as two differing versions, known as Power and Speed, with a few minor differences between them, such as, again, like Pokemon, giving the player access to unique Denju within each version with the intention of having players connect and share Denju phone numbers via a link cable. Telefang may have never seen an official release outside of Japan, but many people across the world have seen it before in other form. The first Telefang received an unofficial English translation a long time ago, though it is widely considered to be a terrible take on the game's dialogue. While the game is not part of the Pokemon franchise, bootleggers took the game's similar concept as a possible way of selling it as if it were, releasing the game as Pokemon Diamond and Jade, with the boxes featuring not just creatures which aren't from the Telefang title, but also not from Pokemon, instead opting to use Shishigami from Studio Ghibli's film Princess Mononoke, and a blue snake-like creature whose origin has not been identified. It was essentially some pre-YouTube bootleg clickbait. These translations altered the game in many ways, pulling back several key features and introducing a slew of errors within the game's code. The bootleg versions strip away the ability to name not just the player character, being forced as Beck, but also the ability to give any of the creatures their own nicknames. The real-time clock was also removed in place of a clock that is only tracked while the game is on, likely to reduce the cost of producing cartridges, as a real-time clock would require the inclusion of a battery. Secret Denju also cannot be unlocked, as calling their phone will result in the game crashing. With the first game being sold as a Pokemon title on bootleg cartridges, it was common to see copies on eBay listed as rare Pokemon games, an issue on the auction site as it infringed upon two different registered trademarks. Eventually, the sale of these bootlegs was banned on the site, making physical copies of the releases harder to come by. The trend of rebranding Telefang by bootleggers didn't end with the first game, as the success of the title change was seemingly acknowledged by those looking to release the sequel to the black market as well. Telefang 2 was translated and sold as a bootleg copy of Pokemon Ruby. In Japan, Telefang appeared not just as a game series, but also as a serialized manga within Comic BombBomb between March 2000 and July 2001. Commissioned by Kodansha, the manga follows much of the same story as the game, providing the reader with several special information pages pertaining to details about the game. Also exclusively in Japanese, the series was later released in 3 volumes, with some chapters having been translated by fans and made available online. A second series was created, though never received any sort of secondary publication, to coincide with the sequel's release. Some of the original art made for the first Telefang manga actually appears within the game's data, though goes entirely unused. Strangely, this art uses the Game Boy Color's double speed mode, leading to a higher range of colors being displayed. As the game worked on both the original Game Boy and Game Boy Color, it's likely these were cut in order to continue the game's backward compatibility. On release, a special edition of the original game was created which included a power antenna attachment for the Game Boy. It provides no real benefits in game, but simply flashes whenever the player receives a phone call. Originally, this attachment was going to be built into the cartridge as shown in an issue of Comic BombBomb. For its sequel, a new power antenna was created for the Game Boy Advance, again providing no in-game benefit. While likely an unintended effect as a result of the bootlegs, an English fanbase online has developed, whose interest in the series still produces updates on a new translation of the original Japanese Telefang. In many ways, the original bootleg releases still provided an enjoyable playing experience of the title, but required a considerable amount of polish. In an interview, Saiko Takaki, the designer of Telefang, stated that at the time, they had never even thought of localizing the game elsewhere. When they heard of the game being circulated overseas as a bootleg Pokemon game and it receiving a positive response among those who played it, they were surprised, though had mixed feelings about it. She also never heard any sort of news relating to an official translation. Smilesoft, the game's developer, was a newcomer at the time of Telefang's development. Telefang was the company's first published title, and wound up being pretty successful. The company had a bright future ahead of it. Their catalog mainly consists of Monster Collection-style RPGs, though the company closed its doors in 2003. The reason for their sudden closure, despite their previous success, was due to the arrest of the company's president, Shuhei Iida, on charges of child prostitution at a junior high school. Allegedly, he had a 15-year-old girl accompany him to a hotel room in exchange for 50,000 yen and, ironically, a mobile phone. Not much is known on the case, although it seems Iida wound up being released, and Smilesoft reformed as Rocket Company, with Iida becoming the company's representative director before the licenses to all of their titles were ultimately purchased in 2006, and are now owned by Imagineer. Natsume, the game's publisher, may share a name with the American publisher of the Harvest Moon series, but is actually an entirely separate company. Once part of the same company, it split into two separate entities in 1995 before Telefang's release, with both retaining the Natsume name, until the Natsume that published Telefang was merged with its own pachinko company Atari Inc., who are also not to be confused with the other company called Atari from America, to become Natsume Atari. While there are patches available to fix some of the overwhelmingly horrible bugs introduced in the bootleg Pokemon release, there are also continued efforts, with constant updates, to fully translate the original Telefang. Similarly, there is also a translation of the second entry in the series with only a few missing portions of English. A huge thank you to the Telefang online community and the information gathered on Wikifang. Hey, if you like this video, go ahead and subscribe. There are regular episodes of Region Locked that go up all the time. And if you liked my delicious voice, go ahead and check out Game Grumps. That's youtube.com/GameGrumps, and also my comedy channel, youtube.com/TheGrumps. We got new episodes going up basically every day, and I think we're pretty funny. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment, leave a like. Hey, share it with your friends. And don't forget to kiss your loved ones.